evening is well-versed. And as you notice on our program, we titled it Pee Wee to Pro. And that's what Mr. George Kearney is here tonight to speak about. So if you put your hands together and welcome Mr. Kearney to Warren, Ohio, I appreciate it.
Everybody just sit back, relax, and here we go. As was pointed out, I was a 67 graduate of Warren Harding, and to be quite honest, unlike a lot of guys that played high school ball, and I'm sure all you coaches have heard these stories about how much better the player was the further removed he was from his playing days. I never felt subject to that. In fact, as Dan Safara can attest, I always told people that I sat the bench so much they called me Your Honor. After attending Central Michigan, 6 shoulder dislocations and a shredded medial brought a screeching halt to a mediocre career. And I found myself in the middle of Michigan, not only not able to play ball anymore, but paying out-of-state tuition. I thought, what the heck is wrong with this picture? So I transferred back and ended up enrolling at Kent State. About that time, my brother Joe and I started the Howland Little Tiger program. And believe me, I've had the privilege of coaching at every level of the game from pee-wees to pros, but the most fun that I ever had was coaching those kids. And I'm very proud of the fact that 2 of them are here tonight in attendance. Scott Santucci, who was our quarterback, and Albert Sipka, who played linebacker and offensive center for us. Now, the thing that was amazing about their team was, I don't care if you're playing against air, what we were able to achieve that last year with the Little Tigers was above and beyond. We were undefeated, untied, and unscored upon, and only gave up 12 first downs for the whole year. So it really, really drove home a lot of success, both for us and for the young men. After closing out the Little Tiger program, I was accepted for a GA, as was mentioned, with Coach James. And Coach James was just a phenomenal mentor. He did a great job, not only in terms of the ball club, but in terms of the coaches. He would drop little zingers in staff meetings and always help prepare us for later on in life as we progressed. One of the things that he told us was, he said that when you work for someone, you're always learning. Hopefully, you're learning the right way, but you're always learning. And that sunk into me very, very deeply. Another thing that he told us is, he said the job of the assistant coaches is to coach the players. The job of the head coach is to coach the coaches. And that's something each one of you coaches who are head coaches now at the high school level have to think about. You have to make sure that every member in your staff is doing it the way you want it done. And if need be, correct them. Now, there's two ways to correct them. You can chastise and yell and scream, or you can take them aside and make some subtle suggestions, and hopefully they'll get the idea. But again, your name is on that record, not theirs. So don't be hesitant on occasion to address some of your assistant coaches. Coach James was an unbelievable disciplinarian. I remember one time we were playing San Diego State out at their place. And we had a team meeting in the ballroom of the hotel. And Gary Pinkel was on one door and I was on the other. And Coach James just nodded to us and we pulled the door shut and the meeting was starting. Well, about a minute later, a particular player walked in, sat down in the front of the room in his customary seat. Coach James never broke stride, never said anything, continued on with the meeting. When he was finished with the meeting, he turned to that player who was a minute late and said, "By the way, Jack, that's going to be a mile tomorrow morning." The ball player he was talking about was Jack Lambert. Every guy on the team sort of looked around and said to themselves and to the guy next to him, "If he'll do that, the Lambert, what the heck would he do to me?" So he got his message across very strong. We had a quarterback at Kent by the name of Greg Copel. And Greg is pretty well known in the Warren area. He had a son, Mike, that played at Harding and another son at Kennedy. Well, Greg, one day, the quarterbacks were warming up, and one of the things I had to do was run what was called POPD from the offensive side. So that meant that each quarterback, as we went through the drill, would come to me, get their next play, while I charted to see where the ball was thrown, complete or incomplete. Well, it so happened I was walking one way, Coach James was coming the other way. And Greg wanted to take a look at the plays on the sheet for that day. And he said, "Coach," and I turned and said, "Yeah," as did Coach James, who was going in the other direction. He turned and said, "Yeah," and Greg said, "No, Coach James, I wanted Coach Kearney." And I came walking over to him and I said, "Yeah, Greg," and he kind of laughed and he said, "Your coach, he's God." That's the kind of reverence that Coach James had. Being with guys such as Nick Saban, Gary Pinkel, Don Capers, you couldn't help but learn every day, not only from them, but from the guys on the team. Our quarterback coach was a guy by the name of Ray Dorr. And Ray wrote his master's thesis on how to put more or less RPMs on the ball. Think he knew much about the mechanics of throwing? Unbelievable guys, unbelievable talent. They were just so helpful. I remember one day, Coach Dorr asked me, he said, "Hey, you busy after practice?" This was spring ball. I said, "No." He said, "Would you mind helping me? I got to break down the OU game." I said, "Sure." So we sat down And Ray said, okay, you do first and thirds, I'll do second and kicks. So again, I'm dating myself. He had the projector on. First play comes up, I'm looking at it, I said, 5-2, nothing to this. Ray went 5-2, end walk weak, mad dog strong, cover 1 free. I looked at him and said, what the? And he said, hold it, turned off the projector. I thought he was gonna throw me out of the office. Started getting up, I said, Ray, what's wrong? He said, well, it's obviously gonna take us a little longer. We better get some beer. So we sat there with a 12-pack, and what would have taken him half an hour, he spent 2 hours teaching me, a dumb kid from Warren, Ohio, how to break down film, what to look for, how to do it right. And those are things I've never forgotten. Well, coaching at Kent was just the beginning. I came back to Ohio, to Warren, and went to work with my brother, Joe. Now, the first team that we had was Pymatuming Valley. And when we went to PV, they had played 25 years of football, and in 25 years, they never had a winning season. The best they've been able to do was 5-5. In that first year, we lost our opening game to Lakeview 6-0. And then our second game, we lost to Mineral Ridge, Jeff Whitaker and company. We lost 12-6. We then reeled off 8 straight wins, won the first league title in the history of the school, and everyone in Andover wanted my brother to run for mayor. So we had a lot of success up there. Joe went on to coach at darn near every school in Ashtabula County, or so it seemed. He was at Ashtabula Harbor. He was at Jefferson. And he was at Ashtabula, what was the last one, Joe? Edgewood, okay? Had a lot of success, got Jefferson into their first appearance in the playoffs. And believe me, we had a lot of fun, drank a lot of beer, which I think is kind of necessary if you're going to coach. At least ways, that's the way I saw it. Then, after coaching with Joe, I started coaching for a couple years semi-pro ball. And one of the teams we had, we finished 9th in the nation, lost to the eventual national champs. But that was not so much fun, more work than anything. Then I went to Europe, and I spent 2 years in Sweden. And believe me when I tell you this, everything you've ever heard about Swedish women is an understatement. Wow. They were very, very nice and very friendly and had great attitudes. And it just made a lot of fun. I came home from Sweden, thought I was done. Oh, by the way, we did win 2 national championships in Sweden, but I cheated like heck. You were allowed to bring an American on each side of the ball. So I brought a D3 All-American quarterback and a D1 All-American nose tackle. And they completely dominated, and I just basically stood and watched. Although there was one funny episode. We had a kicker that was attending Texas El Paso, and we were told wait till Olaf gets here, Coach. Wait till Olaf gets here. Well, he finally, school was over, he ended up back there, and this kid had a cannon on the end of his leg. He could boom. He kicked off, every kick was 5 yards beyond the end zone. So then I said, aha, we're gonna coach him up. I said, Olaf, do you ever directional kick? He said, what is that, Coach? I said, well, we'll say kick to the left hash. And we'll cut the field down and everybody will cover accordingly. He said, okay, tried it, kicked the ball 5 yards deep in the end zone. I said, this will work. So, first game he's there, we scored on the opening drive. He comes to me, says, which way? I said, kick left. He said, okay, tells everybody in the huddle. We line up. He kicked the ball out of bounds to the right, traveled about 20 yards. And he turned to me and just went, I said, just kick deep. Sometimes you can overcoach. That was one of them. After being in Sweden, I came home, said I'm done with the European thing. I got a call from a club in Germany, and they wanted me to come and be their head coach. Now, they had already started the season. They were 0-5, terrible team. And, I said to him, look, I don't think I'm really interested. And the guy said to me, we haven't even talked money. I said, no, we haven't. Go ahead. Well, they offered me about 5 times what I made in Sweden. I said, you need me there when? This was on a Thursday. He said, we need you here Monday. Oh boy. So I packed my bags and away I went. Now this time, I didn't get to bring any players with me. I had to stay with the ones that were already there. However, our quarterback was a young man from Yale who had played high school ball at Manor Lake Catholic. And I talked to Joe, Wallen was his name. I said, Joe, do we have anybody that can catch the ball? He said, Coach, that's all we have. I said, okay, we're going to 4 wides. Ice your arm, buddy, 'cause we're going to air it out. Well, before the first game, I decided that I wanted to get to know the import players. And by import players, I mean Americans and what other Europeans they might have brought in. So in addition to Joe, who was from Yale, we had 2 kids from Czechoslovakia that had played at Yale. One kid's name was Raul, the other kid's name was Daniel. So I brought each of the players in, sat down for about half an hour, and tried to get to know them a little bit. And when I brought Daniel in, the big kid from Czechoslovakia, he was about 6'6", 300 pounds. And I said, Daniel, tell me a little bit about home. And he said his mom and dad were, still living, and his father owned a adult toy store. I said, okay. And he said, Coach, a funny thing happened at the store. And I said, what was that, Daniel? And he said, well, my dad called me one morning, and he said, get your butt down here. I need you to cover the store. I have to go to the bank, and the girl that was normally going to be here was sick. So he said, I need somebody here to watch the store. So Daniel ran down, he said, Dad, I don't know anything about this stuff. He said, I just need you to kind of watch it, and if you can sell something, great. And he left. So about 20 minutes later, a gal came in and said she wanted to buy a toy. And Daniel looked around and he grabbed this white one. He said, how about this? She said, just fine. How much? He said, $25. She said, no problem. Paid for it, went on her way. Well, a little later, another gal came in. She said, I too would like to buy a toy, but I want one a little bigger. So Daniel looked around and he grabbed this black one. He said, how about this? She looked at it and said, fine. How much? He said, $50. He said, okay. Paid for it. Out she went. So finally a third gal came in. She said, I too would like an adult toy, only I want a real big one. So Daniel looked around and he grabbed this plaid one. He said, how about this? She looked at it and said, yeah, that'll be fine. How much? He said, $75. She said, no problem. Paid for it and left. So then his dad came back. He said, well, how'd it go, Daniel? Any problems? He said, no. He said, did you sell anything? He said, well, yeah. Gal came in, wanted a toy. I sold her one of those white ones. He said, what'd you get for it? He said, $25. He said, great. He said, well, then another gal came in, said she wanted a little bigger one. So I sold her one of those black ones. He said, what'd you get for it? He said, $50. His dad said, oh, that's great. He said, huh, you think that's good? Wait till you hear what I got for your thermos. Well, anyway, to give you a quick rundown on Joe Wallen, our quarterback, when he was at Yale, he had 972 attempts throwing the ball. He had 11 interceptions on those 972 attempts. Think he knew much about distributing the ball? And we turned it over to him, and we won 4 out of 5 of our next games. And Joe threw for 31 touchdowns with 4 picks. But the 4 picks weren't really his fault. One was the Hail Mary at the end of the half. One was the tip ball. One the receiver fell down, and one the receiver ran the wrong route. So all in all, he was pretty successful. And we finished on a high note with him. And the amazing thing that occurred while I was in Germany, I happened to be there for 9/11. And I happened to call a friend of mine back in the States. And that was when the first plane had hit. And he said to me, do you know what's going on? I said, no, I'm in the office at the stadium. And just as we were on the phone, the second plane hit. So I ran out of the office and went to a bar that I knew had a satellite dish and got them to put on CNN and watch for several hours. And then I had to head back because we had practice that evening. As I walked in the office, the secretary handed me a stack of phone messages and said, Gunther is on the phone. Now, Gunther was the reporter that covered us, and we had a playoff game scheduled the next Saturday. And I said, put him through. And I said, yeah, Gunther. And he said, Coach, are you going to cancel the game? And I said, Gunther, you people call this game American football. And if nothing more than out of respect for those people that were killed, we're playing. And I said, I'll be go to heck if I'm gonna let some towel-headed, goat-marrying, run my life. We're playing. So I didn't think anything more of it. We went out, practiced, getting ready for the game. The next morning, when I pull into the parking lot at the stadium, there's an RTL satellite truck, which would be like ABC. And a guy gets out and comes walking toward me. He said, Coach Kearney, did you say this? And he's holding the newspaper. He said, I don't read German. What's it say? Did you call the terrorists towel-headed, goat-marrying? I said, I sure did. He said, will you repeat it on national TV? And I said, I will if you don't bleep it. He said, we don't do that over here. So they set up at the stadium, did an article, or did an interview, led me in perfectly. Coach, how do you feel about the terrorists? What do you think? Again, I repeated what I had said, and I said they're going to run like rats or roaches when the lights come on. When an F-16 comes roaring down Main Street in Baghdad. Well, just then the president of the club came walking up to me and started giving me this. And I turned to him and I said, Michael, what's wrong? He said, Coach, they discovered that 2 of the terrorists that were in those planes lived here in Kiel. Okay. I said, you are going to increase security, aren't you? He said, oh, we'll have 3 or 4 cops there. I said, oh boy. Well, their cousins and their homeboys know where I'll be Saturday. So, again, thinking it was over, the next day, secretary comes in and says, Coach, you'll want to take this call. Coach Kearney, it's the U.S. ambassador to Germany. He said, Coach, I just want to thank you for saying what we wish we could say. And thank you very much, and there's someone else who'd like to have a moment. I said, sure. He said, Coach, this is Captain Johnson of the U.S. Marines. We're the security guards at the embassy, and we were thinking about coming to your game Saturday. I said, Captain, let me ask you a question. Are you guys allowed to carry sidearms in public? And he said, yeah, because we have shore patrol badges. I said, how many guys are you thinking about coming? He said, how many can you put in? I said, as many as you want, because you're going to be on the bench and you're going to be my security detail. So in the game films, you see 12 Marines going up and down the bench with U.S. Marines and 45s on their side. I really don't think I had anything to worry about. But I want to talk real brief. I don't want it to get too long-winded, but I want to talk to you coaches who are now in almost to your season. You have 2 major problems that I never had to deal with. One of them, for lack of a better term, is soccer moms. You know, you have these mothers that their children, their kids, have gone through t-ball, gadget ball, little league, soccer, whatnot, and all they ever heard was, we're not going to keep score, and everyone is going to play. Now let me ask you guys, How many of you think you could go to your AD and say, we have a new approach this year. We're not gonna keep score, just turn the scoreboard off and everyone's gonna play. I really don't think many of you would be brought back next year. So what you have to do is make them aware and really emphasize the importance of your JV games. Allow every kid to play. You know, and if you find a situation where you didn't get much time for a kid, next JV game, let him be the captain. Show him some love, because that goes a long way to keeping the parents happy. The next thing that you have to deal with that I didn't ever face is society telling you that these kids don't know what it means to have a family. They might be raised by grandmothers. They might be living with an aunt or an uncle. They might be staying with neighbors, or they might be out on their own. And you might be the only adult male figure in their lives. And that goes for the head coach, right down to every one of your assistants. You have to take it on, and you have to show them some love. You know, I don't care who you are, you're gonna have to raise your voice once in a while on the practice field. But make it an ironclad, absolute rule that if you chew a kid's butt in a drill before that practice is over, be sure to show him some love, because he'll remember the love more than he will the chewing. Last thing I want to say, and this is for all the head coaches in the crowd, when you have your final, what we always call final edition for this week's game, your opening game, what I suggest, whether it's Wednesday night for a Thursday game, Thursday night for a Friday game, as you will wrap up that practice, get all your players around you, get them jumping up and down, and designate two of the bigger kids to carry you off the field while everyone's hooping and hollering. And you'll find it might not help week one, but it might save your job depending upon your record. Now, the only variance of that is, Coach Allen, you might want to designate 4 kids. Sorry, Chad, I couldn't help it. Fellas, folks, thank you very much. I hope I've given you some insight. Thank you much.